And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, Director at WEIU. My co-host, Alicia Haynes.
Hi, everyone.
A couple weeks left in the semester. Our guest today from Lakeland College, Mr. Joe Tillman.
Good morning, Joe Tillman, Lakeland College.
He is the Renewable Energy Instructor and Coordinator at Lakeland, plus does a lot of stuff that we're going to get into today as we talk a little bit about renewable energy, solar energy, and all kinds of stuff like that. But Joe, let's start off talking a little bit. It is Earth Day 2019 on the day we record this and go live on some platforms. So Earth Day, let's talk about its origins and, kind of what it means.
Sure. Well, Earth Day is really the biggest secular holiday around the planet right now, believe it or not. It was really started in 1970 by Senator Gaylord Nelson. He was senator from Wisconsin, and he had been really bothered by the fact that in 1969 there was a large oil spill off the coast of California, Santa Barbara. He decided to do a little something about it, and kind of in that context, he had Rachel Carlson's Silent Spring in 1962, sold 500,000 books, so people will realize that even though the planet was big, it's finite, and it's one home. So Senator Nelson got together with Pete McCloskey, who was believe it or not, he was a Republican, and so it was a bipartisan issue. They got Dennis Hayes from Harvard to serve as kind of a coordinator, and they decided to do Earth Day on April 22nd because it was between spring break and the end of finals. Hey, so that worked out okay. It was incredibly successful, because by the end of 1970, there were three major pieces of legislation that were approved. You had the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and then the Endangered Species Act all come together. And then there were some Earth Day celebrations for a while, but in 1990, it was Dennis Hayes was asked to do it on a global scale. And that's really where the modern environmental movement has started.
There you go. Now, one of the things that has happened in Earth Day with all the good stuff, but ocean pollution right now is just unbelievable. Your thoughts on it, and is there a way that we can, stop that? I know there's a lot of people working on it, but ocean pollution thing is just terrible when you see what's happening.
One of the greatest challenges is when you make plastics. So much of our plastics are petrochemical based, so they're not biodegradable. And so far, nature has yet to come up with an organism to chow down on plastics. Okay, so obviously there is an issue of recycling that we have to do. That more than ever before. So much in the way of plastic bottles and such. If we can reuse them and recycle, anything like that is going to help. But ocean pollution, just with the amount of wildlife, we almost have man-made oceans of plastics and such. Just a terrible thing. Generally speaking, if you can reduce, reuse, and recycle, the 3 R's, in conservation and for sustainability. Really, because at the end of the day, it's more than just renewable energy. It's really about sustainability. How do we sustain human life as well as life of the wildlife here on the planet?
Good answer. Now, I know that one of the things that you're working on right now, and we'll get into some details, but there's a solar energy buy-in plan through Lakeland College with some help from communities in the district. Why don't you just talk about it, and if things come up, we'll just kind of chime in with some questions, but go ahead and just talk about the MREA and what you're doing over there.
Sure. So the Midwest Renewable Energy Association is out of Custer, Wisconsin. It was started back in 1990 by a group of individuals that just wanted to do something hands-on to try to make the world a little bit better place, particularly with renewable energy. Over the years, they've become a tremendous education organization. They do a lot. Their focus is primarily on the residential side, which is really where a lot of the growth and the greatest stuff with sustainability has to come. Okay? Just because there's a lot more houses and individuals than there are companies. Okay?
Makes sense.
So they do a lot of work with solar PV, photovoltaic. They do a lot of work with solar hot water, and then they do a lot of work with small wind, residential wind. So MREA a few years ago decided that, and it was part of the idea, kind of a corollary off of the Million Solar Roof initiative of the 1990s, where they would go ahead and try to do a group discount. If we could get several people in an area interested in putting up solar, maybe we could go to a solar installer and say, okay, we have 50 kilowatts or we have 100 kilowatts of solar that we want to install. Can we put it in for a cheaper price? And the answer is yes, it's worked before. It's worked quite well. Champaign, Urbana has done at least 2 of these. The last one that they did, I believe, involved Piatt County, so Monticello involved with it. Bloomington Normal has done a few. So now Charleston, Effingham, and Mattoon, and basically everybody in the district of Lakeland College. So from the Wabash to basically Payne, Illinois, Wabash River to Payne, Illinois, gets a crack at being educated on solar if they want to, and to be able to put their name in the hat.
Now, the education part's kind of what you're doing, including
Correct.
today's show and some other events that you have. So talk about the education, and then we'll get on to what if the individual wants to get involved, where they go.
Absolutely. So the education side of this deals with the core of it is what we call power hours. Now, I'll be honest about power hours. It's about 50 minutes or an hour of discussion and such, of presentations talking about advantages and disadvantages of solar, payback, different things like that. We'll just get down to some of the financials. And then we usually have about a half hour or so of question and answers and such. We're going to schedule somewhere between 18 and 20 of these total. We're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood. Right now we've got about 5 or 6 scheduled throughout the district. We have one here in Charleston at the library coming up here in early to mid-May. We have one, I believe, May 7th at Douglas Hart. Charleston's at May 19th at Charleston Public Library.
Okay.
At different times. And we're working right now with different venues on doing scheduling. Sarah Bush will have a few down in Effingham. If we can get into a winery or a brewery, we want to do that because, well, it kind of relaxes the atmosphere and everything. So.
There you go. Those are the ones we want to go to.
Absolutely.
Now, for the public, I mean, I know you were talking about, but let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of having solar at your house. If you have a house in one of these communities in the district, talk about what's the good and the bad about solar energy.
Okay. Well, here's the good part. If you have solar on your roof, you get to use all the electricity more or less at your house, okay? From an engineering point of view, you don't have to worry so much about excess numbers of transmission lines. You're going to actually, or line losses, okay? Whenever you send electricity distances, I don't care if it's 50 miles, I don't care if it's 50 feet, but the further you send electricity, the more electricity, quite honestly, you waste on heating up the air. It's just the natural thing, okay? And I don't care if it's a coal-fired power plant 200 miles from Chicago, or if it's even a wind farm 200 miles from Chicago. When you send electricity over the grid, you're going to lose some to the atmosphere. There's no way around it. That's the laws of physics right now, okay? So with solar modules, technically speaking, I mean, that's the correct word. We always call them solar panels, okay? But strictly speaking, with solar modules on a home, you do this right, your line losses tend to be minimized.
Yeah.
You tend to use the electricity right there at your house, okay? Depending upon the size of the system that you can put in on your house, you can usually go anywhere from you can generate anywhere from 25 to maybe 50% of your own electricity that you need at a house over a course of a month, okay, which is a significant reduction. The other thing, too, is that you basically stabilize your cost of electricity. So like, around here, if you're in Mattoon, our electrical provider is Ameren, but you actually get your electricity. A lot of people have opted in for home field, which is about 5.3 cents a kilowatt hour. Ameren comes in and charges another 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and there's some taxes, so you end up spending about 9-10 cents a kilowatt hour on electricity. With solar on your house, let's say you put it in right now, it's going to be somewhere, and it depends upon how many people buy in and what the final price is. But you're looking at generation at your house probably for around 10 or 11 cents, and that's going to stay that way for the life of the system, which should be around 20-25 years. Okay, so you think of where electricity has been at 10-15 years ago and where the price is going right now. When you put solar on your house, you're kind of locking in a portion of your electrical generation for the next 20-25 years pretty easily. So, I mean, those are some really great advantages. It's also been shown that people tend to pay more if you sell your house. People tend to pay more if you got solar modules up on the roof.
Oh, wow, I didn't think about that.
Okay, so for real estate values, it really kind of helps out quite a bit. Also too, generally people tend to use electricity more in the summertime when there's electricity. Turns out our summers in Illinois, pretty darn warm because the sun's out quite a bit. So that helps out. That's kind of a big plus there with it. The disadvantages, well, the obvious disadvantage is this right now. The sun goes down at night.
Yeah.
Okay? So, you're going to be usually connected with, most of the systems that we use are what we call grid tie systems. You're still connected to your electrical, to the electrical provider. It's just that you produce some of your own. And electricity is kind of a little bit like magic. It is. I think of it like the grid being kind of like a Clydesdale, and your PV system at your house is being kind of like a Shetland pony. Okay, you hitch them both up to a plow or to a wagon or something. They're both going to pull. Now, it turns out, though, with electricity, it always goes to path of least resistance. Okay, just natural tendency of it. So the Shetland pony is going to do as much work as it can do, and then you got the Clydesdale there to bring in whatever extra needs to, extra needs to be provided. You got that there. Okay.
So when you talk about, I want to go back to like, if someone was going to put solar panels or solar modules, I paid attention, on their home, can you give somebody an estimate of what you think that would cost on a normal home in maybe in Nichols or Effingham County?
Sure. I'm going to give conservative numbers, and if they come in lower, well, that's a good thing. How's that sound?
Perfect.
I've never gotten in trouble for saying something's going to cost, cost a little more, and actually comes in less. Okay. Generally speaking, right now you're looking at about $2 a watt. Okay, around $2.50 a watt. A little more, a little less. So if we say that the average size renewable PV system going in on a house is around 6 kilowatts, okay, around 6 kilowatts, which is a healthy number, okay, it's a healthy number. You're going to be looking at somewhere around let's say $15,000 to $18,000, okay. With the tax credit, you take a third of that off. So let's make numbers easy. Let's say it's 18, and so a third of it goes away, so you're down to 12. So you're looking at around 12,000. Okay.
Because the government does offer that discount if you are doing it. So the government they want people to switch to solar, if that's what that tells me. Quite honestly, solar is the fastest growing segment of renewable energy out there.
Okay. And why is that? Because I remember for a while there was a lot of people bashing solar energy, saying it doesn't make any sense. The sun goes down, and everything else in between. But in recent years, it definitely is on the rise. Is there a reason for that?
There's several reasons for it. The technology with solar has just gotten incredibly better. 11 years ago when I got into solar, if you would have told me that I would see utility grid, utility size solar in this area, I would have said, I don't know what you're smoking or drinking, but make mine a double, okay? Okay, but we have 2 utility-size solar, one over in Shelbyville, Illinois, the other one is over in Paris, okay?
Oh, wow.
So our technology has gotten so much better. Our efficiencies are getting better. The other thing with solar is an issue. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting close, and it's called thin film technology. Wind power, and this isn't anything against wind. I mean, I've done quite a bit of work with wind, okay? You're not going to make wind turbines a lot smaller, okay? You're not. The material that you use in wind is what it is. Solar, though, we're trying to make stuff with thin film so that instead of it being, thousands of atoms thick, we can try to make the stuff maybe closer to 100 atoms thick or 50 atoms thick. So you really lower the amount of material that you're using.
And the load on the house as well.
The load
right?
on the house, yeah.
So then it makes it more efficient.
And it makes it more efficient. Okay. It's kind of like a cocktail when you make a solar panel. There's silicon, and then you have to add a little bit of boron or phosphorus, actually a little bit of both, and then you add a few rare earth elements here and there. We've really come up with some really good concoctions. The Chinese have gotten in the solar market, which has helped driven prices down. And there's a lot of domestic solar being built here in the United States. So the price of solar has just really gone down, and quite honestly, if you look at long-term government expectations, solar is, by 2050, according to the U.S. Energy Information Agency, which was started underneath President Carter, it's nonpartisan. It's just, it is what it is, okay? They're projecting wind growth to be somewhere around 27 gigawatts, which is basically, if you take Newton Power Station, that's around 20 Newton power stations in the next 30 years. They're looking at solar growth to be somewhere in the neighborhood of around 124 to 127 gigawatts. Okay, the solar technology is just, there's no maintenance. There's very little maintenance to it. Okay, so you have very little maintenance. You have higher, you're beginning to see efficiencies now. Wind technically is still efficient, but you don't have any moving parts with solar, and the price parity now is down with wind. The other thing, too, believe it or not, one of the things that Elon Musk has done, other than launch a Tesla into space, okay, but he's done a lot of work with battery technology, and other companies have really kicked in with battery technology. So we're actually beginning to see what we call solar walls. And basically what it is just think of a bunch of your laptop batteries, just all wired together, okay? Lithium-ion cells, and lithium storage, energy storage has really gotten to be pretty big. So what we're looking at is, quite honestly, coupling solar as well as wind and other renewable sources, but particularly solar, with these battery packs, and really being able to run houses and things really, quite honestly, overnight off of the excess generation during the day.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so
Without causing a fire.
yes, without causing. Yeah, it's actually there's different types of chemistry. There's different types of chemistries with solar, with lithium cells, rather, lithium batteries. And there's a certain type of lithium cell that, yeah, no bueno. It's just not good on an airplane, not good in a house. You got to watch it, okay?
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of the new lithium cells that have been out for the last, actually, several years now. That you're not going to start a fire with them.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So for the people that, as you go around the Lakeland College District and talk to different folks and get different communities to buy in, then, two questions here. Are there enough people right now that you think will buy in, and is there a goal that you need to get so you can take back to the solar providers or the MERE? And how does that all work over the next couple of years as this plan goes forward?
Sure. Well, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to execute the plan basically by around October 1st of this year, at least get the orders together.
Okay.
So between basically starting in May and going through September, we're going to be going around, myself and some cohorts.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to be going around to the various towns: Effingham, Charleston, Sullivan, Pana, Shelbyville, Paris. Always wanted to go to Paris. Okay. I've been to Paris a few times. Marshall and such. Okay, and doing these solar power hours, in which we're just going to educate people. Okay, and some of these will be in the daytime. Some of these will be in the evening after work. Okay, if people are interested, they can sign up, and then we will have our apparent low bidder, our approved installer, actually come out free of charge and do a site assessment. How many hours of sunlight is this place going to be good for solar or not?
Yeah,
and give people an honest assessment of how many of what the production can be at that site. If people are interested with what they've seen, with if they're like, oh wow, we can get maybe 5 or 6 hours of peak sun at this location during the course of a day or your average, then they can sign up for maybe 6 or 12, however big system they feel like they want to go. And we're going to try to get our orders in by late September of this year. I believe it's September 30th, I believe, is the actual date.
so this is a pretty aggressive plan that you have pushing forward.
Yeah. What we're trying to do is that right now we know that the federal mandates, or then the federal tax credits, are good for this year. So if we can get everything at least started and reasonably well installed, then everybody gets the tax credits, and that's what we want. Okay. Initially, we think there's going to be, I think we can probably find easily 25 homes and businesses that want to do this. I would love to see about 50. I'm going to be honest, about 50's 42 to 50 is kind of the magic number. Because and I know this is aggressive. This is setting the bar high, but you know what? If you don't dream big.
Well, if your goal was 6, then that wouldn't seem like it would be worth it. But I mean, you set a goal of 50 in Lakeland College's district, which Eastern Illinois University is right in the middle of as well. I would think that would be close to being attainable, if not attainable.
I think it's attainable. I think it's realistically attainable. If we could get around 42 to 50 homes involved in this, or homes and businesses involved, small businesses, we'll be about 300 kilowatts, which is that's pretty healthy. That's a nice size.
On the financing side, have you talked to banks and lending institutions about, not everybody can write a $12,000 check if that's what it comes into. Are they willing to do this in some ways?
It depends on a person's credit.
I know it's a lot of person's credit and the job and all that, but I mean, they still have to have some kind of, know that people are going to come and want to do this.
Sure. I think the banks are pretty well reasonably open to this. We also have there's been other I'm gonna call them models that we follow.
Yeah.
So if you've got a group of college students or a group of young adults that are just out of school, because you're broke and you got student loans and such, okay? MREA has we've done things in the past where we've been able to set up, financing where you do a payment on maybe, here's maybe like a 2 kilowatt system or something, okay?
Yeah.
There's been different ways around this. We've had cities actually come and say, we're going to go into gray space, like an old factory, an old building or something, and put in some solar modules in there and tie that directly into the city.
Is there red tape involved in any of these cities where there's not solar allowed, or it's not on, how does that work when you talk to cities?
Well, we've never had a resounding no. We have had 2 cities in the district that either own their own utility company or are involved with electrical aggregation. So they've been, I refer to them as being rather agnostic on the thing. They're not against us, but they're not really not.
Which is understandable.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like competition, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, and that's perfectly good, okay? I mean, I don't have any, I don't harbor any ill will.
Right.
They don't. I totally understand it, and I'm just happy though that they are very welcoming and letting us come to those cities and do presentations and talk.
There you go. Now let's tie this back into students. Obviously, I have Annalisa here, but also when you teach your classes, energy efficiency, is that something kids care about, or do you really have to get them to, like I say, quote unquote, beat them upside the head for them to get that as the world goes forward, we're going to have to conserve and we're going to have to do a lot of changes in this world?
I think most of my students now are either millennial or post-millennial, actually post-millennial now. A lot of them are very, very concerned about the future because they know that it's going to be their mess to have to clean up and their kids' mess. Okay, but a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So you take the first steps and you try to be part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. So I find that the generation that I'm teaching is superb, and the newer ones that are coming in right now are kind of, quite honestly, they could very well be the next greatest generation. I mean, they have a tremendous sense of loyalty, but a tremendous sense of, we need to do something to make things better. Here's a goal, and we're going to go after it.
Your thoughts on what he just said, Annalisa?
Well, I do agree with you that a lot of the kids that are coming out of high school are very concerned with the future and and you see it in voting too. A lot more young people are voting just because they want to be involved and they want the sense of civic engagement. But what I wanted to know was whether or not in those coming steps is Eastern going to have any assistance with Lakeland. I think that this would be an incredible opportunity because I know we've worked with Lakeland in the past and numerous times before. So is this something that you foresee happening?
Oh yeah, Eastern has early on pledged to help us out with this. So Eastern is something of a partner. I mean, we got several partners on this. I mean, Effingham Recycles, Charleston Huddle. The city of Charleston officially joined the ranks last Thursday. Okay, so they and a big thank you for all the city officials for that. Coles Progressives have been involved. Effingham Chamber of Commerce has some of their members, if not officially, at least some of their members have chimed in to help. And of course, Midwest Renewable Energy Association. Lakeland's ties with EIU run fairly deep. run fairly deep. A lot of us in the technology divisions have had a lot of
Absolutely.
have a lot of ties. Okay, so we see EIU being more involved, and even for this weekend. I mean, we're going to have a table over here at the festival.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Celebrations this weekend.
Yeah, your celebration this weekend.
What can people do? I know that this is a big thing, but what can people do on a regular basis to help conserve and just make the world a better place? It's Earth Day 2019. I always think it's good to be reminded on some tips.
So some things: when you leave a room, shut off the lights. Don't leave it to the computer to shut off the lights, okay? Physically shut off the lights, okay? Every time, try to carpool. Drive a little bit slower. I know when we're young and in a hurry, by gosh, we like to fly, okay? When you leave the house, turn down the thermostat in the morning, or put a programmable thermostat in that you can tell, certain things like that. I know everybody likes
Hopefully we tell it to turn up and not down at this point, right?
Yeah, they're still there.
I'm tired of turning it down.
Yeah, I'll turn it down, okay? And then the other thing, too, I know we like to drink, water and a lot of energy drinks. Use a recyclable.
Yeah.
Which ironically, you brought one in today.
Yes, I
Lisa.
did.
Good thing.
See, you're ahead of the curve. You get an A.
I do, and
Okay.
I walked here. I'm kidding.
And you was okay. But I mean, those are all basic things, because keep this in mind: one kilowatt hour of energy saved is easier than generating it.
I like that. Could be our quote of the day.
Okay.
That is going to be the quote of the day.
Couple minutes left. Let's learn a little bit about Joseph Tillman. You can go to dinner with one person that's alive today. Who would that be? And you can't say your wife. That's an easy way out.
That's an easy one. You know what? Seriously, if I was to go, I would love to go to dinner with Dan Aykroyd, believe it or not.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Okay, Dan Aykroyd is, honest to goodness, probably one of the better free thinkers out there. His stuff with not only with renewable energy, but just with a lot of stuff with some areas that a lot of areas of research and some really neat stuff. It's kind of cutting edge. Everything old is new again.
What makes you the maddest when you see a news story about renewable energy and what they do wrong, or what part of that they do wrong?
I like to come in balanced. I hate there's no one side has ownership of the truth. The truth usually lives between the two extremes. And in public discourse today, it's either one or the other. And you know what? Life is analog more times than not. It's not necessarily digital.
Favorite class you took in college was?
My favorite class I took in college was, oh my gosh, it was either Intro to Astronomy with James Keller up at the University of Illinois, or it was Introduction to Meteorology. And because the guy that taught it was straight out of the 1960s, right down to the shaved haircut and everything. It was great.
One last question. Do you ever get lost at Lakeland with those round buildings?
Yes. Yes, occasionally. I hate to say it, but yes.
Well, Mr. Tillman, we appreciate you coming in today and talking about Earth Day and solar energy and some of the programs you're working on at Lakeland and tying in with Eastern. And we appreciate you coming in. I hope you had a good time.
I had a great time, Jeff. Thank you. And Annalisa.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's been such a pleasure.
All right. We'll have you back. This is Hit Mix 88.9, WEIU, and your 13. We're everywhere. Have a great day, everybody.